The band. If you're in one, you need other people. This week we cover how you pick your fellow musicians.
This is Anyone Can Play Guitar, the podcast for musicians and music lovers that takes you behind the scenes of the music industry. This week is brought to you in partnership with MGR Music. Ever wanted to learn an instrument, hone your skills, or pick up something completely new? You can get so far by yourself, however professional guidance can make all the difference. With a network of tutors right across the UK and rates starting from as little as £15 per hour, visit mgrmusic.com now to get started. Hello and welcome to episode 51 on forming and joining a band with me James and him Ben. So last week we covered fans, where we heard from Brian Garcia on what it meant to be a super fan of a band and a big time emphasis on the big time memorabilia collector.
It's in capitals.
You almost have feelings for that song. As funny as that may seem, you start bonding with that song, you start relating to that song.
Today it's forming a band, picking those other unfortunate souls that are going to be stuck with you for the foreseeable future, potentially living in and out of each other's pockets, in close proximity in the back of vans, dingy practice rooms, when you're at your best and your worst. They need to be just right. In season 1, we spoke to Ross Millard of the Futureheads about this very thing.
And we just got on so well, man, there are people that you just get attracted to, aren't they, of music taste and just your sensibilities.
Today we split things into two halves. We start with forming a band, where you'll hear from Dave Keuning about forming the Killers, Fickle Friends, Louisa, if she drew the gun, Get Cape, Wear Cape, Fly, and State Champs.
That's a lot of guests.
It's a lot of guests, Ben. Then we move on to what it's like to either join a band or recruit someone into a band.
More guests?
Oh, there's lots of to and fro when it comes to creating bands.
Yeah.
Here we talk to Justin Lockley of Editors. Mm-hmm. He joined a band.
He did join a band.
We talk to Keith and Chris of We Are Scientists. They've recruited people into their band.
To have.
Jimmy Eat World. He's had a pretty steady band.
Very.
And the Sheepdogs as
Yes.
well. Here's a little taster from Dave of what's to come.
It's good to get out there and meet people and try people and do that, because I didn't have the advantage of knowing people already in Vegas,
Remember, a great way to support the show is to go on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts and give us a rating and a review. It really does make a massive difference for the show. Now, on with the episode.
Forming a band is pretty critical. This can range massively from a few mates getting together to give it a try, people respond to adverts in practice rooms, or carefully put together supergroups. Each will have their own pros and cons, and there's no magic formula. We'll start with Fickle Friends. Being around other musicians can certainly help as a starter.
Times. But I read about that the two of you got together in Lipa, is that right?
We did, yeah.
Liverpool. And then you met the rest of the band BIMM,
Yeah.
Brighton.
Down at BIM, yeah.
So how useful was it having that community of artists and other creative people to create your band? So how did you pick each other rather than the myriad of other people you could have picked?
Well, I put the band together,
Mm-hmm.
but Sam and I had a year at Lipa to just we were doing music there,
Mm-hmm.
and I think a lot of people in their first year of uni kind of are still figuring things out a little bit, and they're not really ready to get on with stuff. So we'd already done that and arrived at BIM kind of a year ahead, I guess. So I was just I'm putting a band together and I got to grab people quick, is what happened.
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
so I started the band, I guess. It just kind of happened. I was in a class with Jack. I kind of already knew Chris, and went to the same open mic night, and obviously Sam and I were already friends.
Yeah.
And then Harry was just Jack's mate from home. So it just it happened quite quickly.
Cool. And did you have designated instruments at the time, or would you just go, well, I want to be in the band, so I'm just going to learn to play
No.
our bassist did?
People had their instruments. Well,
Yeah.
I guess the only person really is the fact that Jack is a bit of a multi-instrumentalist, and he's actually a drummer. But
that was his first instrument.
Okay.
It was the only thing that was open was synth, and he had a Nord synth, so I was just like, well, that's what you're going to play.
Yeah.
And he has since added on things because I think he has felt a bit unfulfilled just with synths. So now he has a synth, and he has a
His
sample pad,
drums, yeah.
and an SPD, and he has a drum set. So
Just to feel.
Yeah.
just to feel more,
I think-
manly maybe.
I think all of that comes from because he played drums first.
Uh-huh.
He's got the drums, and the SPD is essentially a drum kit.
Yeah.
And then the sampler, he just plays rhythms, so it's kind of just like that's where he comes from. I reckon.
I was playing synth as well for a bit, and then I gave that to Harry, our bassist, and so he does
That's
synth
true.
bass and he plays actual bass as well. So kind of jiggled it around a little bit.
Dave Keuning first touches on his current band, Keuning.
Yes,
Unsurprisingly, he had plenty of people to choose from. I guess you would.
you would.
If you've been in the Killers, there's probably quite a few people who'd quite happily be in your next
He
band.
does. He loves a band with a K.
But what was the main factor in choosing his new bandmates?
You've got a new gang, a new band.
Uh-huh.
How has that been?
These guys are great. They're from San Diego. I had a lot of friends to pick from, musician-wise, but the ones that live out of town, just it wasn't going to work. You know, there a lot of them were willing to do it, but then they'd have to travel in, and I can only get together this day and this day, and I'm like, it's location is everything. You know,
Right.
like they say, location.
Yeah.
It's just easier to have some people come over, and found some good guys that live around town.
That's cool. So that's where you live now, isn't it, San Diego? So
Yeah.
what's it like for music in San Diego?
It's pretty good. It's such a laid-back town anyway. There's kind of a small scene, and I try and get out and see some of the younger bands because I know there's bands in San Diego like Louis XIV, Transfer, Nervous Records, and those bands that I already know, and then I keep going to those bands. But there's some newer stuff you got to look for. But, you know, it's not overwhelming. Like LA, there's so many different bands and places, and it's a bit of a tougher scene.
Now we move on to forming the Killers. We all know the story about how Dave and Brandon met,
And which was?
Brandon was in a few bands in Las Vegas. Dave Keuning came from Iowa. And this seems old-fashioned now, James, but it works. Brandon came across an advertisement in a newspaper, which was Dave.
Old school.
And he had a few songs. One of them was that, Mr. Brightside one. And the rest
Went down reasonably well.
The rest is musical history. So what helped in their scenario, though?
Was there many musicians that you could draw upon to form the band? I know there's the famous story of how you and Brandon met. How long did that process take to find the people you were looking for?
To answer your question, there was enough musicians in Vegas. It's more about getting out there and meeting people. What I found was that a lot of people in bands, because I would talk to bands in Vegas, they had already known each other for a long time. So they're playing with their childhood buddies on drums and bass and guitar. And it's actually interesting because that is sort of how the Killers were started, was because I didn't know anybody and I was an outsider. That's why I put out the ad that everyone talks about.
Yeah.
Everyone talks about me putting out the ad. Well, I did that because I didn't know anybody. So I just wanted to see who would reply, and then Brandon replied, and then we had to, borrow Mark from another band and borrow Ronnie from another band, and we had other bass players and drummers before those guys. Actually, we had a couple different bass players and a couple different drummers that, for whatever reason or another, didn't work out. Mark and Ronnie, of course, were really good, and we wanted to keep them forever when we got them. But it's just good, no offense to those guys. It's good to get out there and meet people and try people and do that, because I didn't have the advantage of knowing people already in Vegas, And it's the other thing is a lot of the good musicians don't reply to those ads. Those ads don't usually work, actually. They really don't. Most of the good musicians don't look at those, and they're already in bands, and you got to get out there and just kind of watch bands, and then maybe you'll find a drummer who is ready to try a different band, because that's what drummers do. They always band hop to the next best band.
They're a rare commodity, aren't they?
Yeah.
So I suppose that's a really good way of looking at it, because the band I was in, we were close friends for years. James and I were close friends since school.
Yeah.
And that really helps get that gang mentality. But I guess if you're looking at it from a music professional business sense,
It's having that same mindset of coming together, as in you're great, I'm great, let's get together and create something great.
Yeah.
So I suppose there's two ways of looking at it. So that's a really good lesson of just putting yourself out there. You don't know who's going to be there, do you?
Yeah.
Can work out.
I would say my advice would be don't be too picky.
No.
Because
we certainly won't.
You're never going to find the exact guy you're looking for that has the right look and has the exact same musical taste as you.
Yeah.
Brandon and I did not have the same musical taste, but we had a lot that crossed over.
Mm-hmm.
Like, both loved 80s, both loved Oasis, and a lot of that stuff, even though I liked, a little bit more of the heavy 90s stuff and the heavy 80s stuff on guitar, because I'm a guitar player.
Yeah.
But then we matched on a lot of stuff too.
So Dave didn't have the advantage of knowing people. Sam Duckworth, Get Cape Where Cape Fly, backs up how much it helps to actually know people in the music world.
I totally understand. So when you get to the live environment then, how do you put together this ensemble of people? So is it through the jamming, as you said, or have you known these people in your band for years?
Jay and Mikey have known for years. I think good musicians and good people are like a magnet, and you just tend to there's just people that just tend to bounce off each other and play in different bands with each other. Like everyone here is played in a different band with somebody else at least. You know what I mean? So like Callum and Phil play in Pocket Dragon. They also play with Lydia, who plays keys. Callum's played with Linda for Kate Nash. Jay's played with Kate as well.
Okay.
So we're all just kind of we're all playing in each other's bands, and hanging out in the studio and we've toured together in different projects. And there's a natural chemistry, and then there's a musical chemistry in that everyone just loves to play.
Yeah, and I guess there's also an element of trust as well, to know what you're getting from that person.
I think if you know somebody well enough, or to a level before you go into a musical environment with you, it's so much better than if you start cold. I always think that with like co-writing or production, like I think the first step needs to be like, do you get on? Is there personal chemistry?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you're trying to do something relatively personal, and also when you're on tour, you're in an enclosed space and in a tight environment. If there are things that like cube out people, it just amplifies it. It's like being in a petri dish.
We've spoken about forming a band with your mates. That's what we did, James.
We did.
Another classic is with a sibling.
Many people think we're brothers.
They do.
We are not.
We are not. Tyler from State Champs, though, has this to say.
2010, is that right, when you formed with Derek?
Yeah.
Were you in bands before that?
Yeah, so I met Derek when he was 13 and I was 14. We didn't start State Champs till he was 19 and I was 20.
Okay.
So we used to play in metal bands. We weren't in any bands together until State Champs, but my musical history basically, my brother is 3.5 years older than me, and he turned, what did he turn, 15? He's like, I want to play guitar, Mom. I'm like, fucking guitar. and I was a hobbyless loser as a kid. I couldn't find anything I liked. My parents were just like, what do you like? All you like is video games. It's like, so I'm like, get off my back, whatever. I like professional wrestling, video games, like World of Warcraft, whatever. And they finally they're like, you should try playing bass because your brother's gonna play guitar and you can play bass, and we'll get you guys lessons together, and it'll be this great thing. And a couple months into him taking his guitar lessons, he decided it wasn't for him. And I really liked playing bass, so I was like, I would always play his guitar when he was at school or whatever, when he wasn't home, so I wasn't allowed to touch it when he was home.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so I was sneaking playing his guitar, and then when he abandoned his lessons, so basically this guy would come to our house for an hour. Half hour for me on bass, half hour for Ryan on guitar. And then I got the full hour once he stopped, and I said to my guitar teacher, George, I was like, would you teach me guitar? I really want to learn. And he taught me for maybe 6 months. And then, because I was still a kid, I got it in my head. He was a classical guitar teacher, and I was like, this is lame. I want to play metal. Come on. I grew up loving, Slipknot and all that stuff, and, I wanted to be like Mick from Slipknot, I wanted to fucking shred. And he wasn't teaching me how to shred. He would teach me how to play, Jet songs. Are you going to be my girl? And I'm like, fuck.
You have to start somewhere, though, I guess.
Yeah, you really do. And I'm really grateful for it because he taught me a bunch of good things. But I told my mom, I was like, I want to take lessons from someone else, someone who could teach me more like metal stuff, like whatever. And lo and behold, I never took lessons from anybody else. I just taught myself by playing in my room.
Yeah.
But that I'm telling you that because that all leads into the first band I was in, which was with my brother. So it was like a metalcore band, and he was the screamer.
Right.
He put down the instrument. He was just screaming. I was playing bass, and the two other guys that were in the band, Chris and Nick, I grew up with them as well. Went to school together. They're in a band called Drug Church, which is signed to Pure Noise Records, and they sound like, I don't even know at this point, but they sound fucking awesome. And it's really cool because like they're like doing well. They're touring and stuff. We're actually playing a festival with them in Amsterdam at the end of the month. So it's like it's crazy that like these, you know, my brother completely normal. He works for the state of New York in an office building. He doesn't do anything with music anymore. But the three of us are still like active and touring.
That's cool.
At a professional level.
Yeah.
You know? But so yeah, that was my first band, and we used to play with Derek's band all the time. Derek's band was also like a metalcore band. You know, he was actually screaming at age 13. Like, yeah. And we just, you know, played in bands, and I was in a couple more bands after that as well.
Now, for Louisa, if she drew the gun, it wasn't necessary for a bandmate to come first for her.
Yeah, she drew the gun. That was just me.
Yeah.
It was just me doing gigs on my own with my guitar, and then I met James Skelly from the Coral.
Yeah.
And we started working on what was going to be an EP, but then turned out to be an album. And then the band kind of came together during that time. So it was kind of like we started making the music in the studio that was like a band.
Mm-hmm.
So then it kind of needed a band like to go along with the music. So it was like the band came along with the recording side of things.
Right.
This week is brought to you in partnership with MGR Music. Ever wanted to learn an instrument, hone your skills, or pick up something completely new? You can get so far by yourself, however professional guidance can make all the difference. With a network of tutors right across the UK and rates starting from as little as £15 per hour, visit mgrmusic.com now to get started.
So now it's time for our regular good cause slot. This week is the turn of Keith and Chris of We Are Scientists, and there's two.
I'm pretty into, very recently, because my wife adopted a stray cat.
Right.
Well, while I was gone. And so now she's very, like, deep into, like, local animal rescue in New York City. So there's a store called PS9 that now a lot of my money goes to. But yeah, they take strays and like spay and neuter them and like keep colonies around Greenpoint and stuff.
Cool.
I'm a big fan of I'll just give a quick shout out to this charity, Children International, that my wife and I started giving money to like 15 years ago. And you kind of sponsor a child in a relatively impoverished part of the world. And it's the whole thing of like, the Peter Singer thing of like, if you could use your $5 on a coffee to give somebody water, like you're compelled to do that. So we give $25 a month, which is nothing. It's obviously an ethical failure, but you have the same person the whole time, which is really cool. So we have this kid, Victor, who's my son's age.
Right.
And you get a letter from them every month, and you can write back. We write back. I don't think you have to, but and it's been pretty cool to just see this kid in this little tiny town in Mexico, like kind of grow up with my son.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's really weird.
So you can find out more about these two good causes at ps9pets.com and children.org. Now, back to the episode. Now it's time for the second half of the show, as we move on to joining a band. Not every band stays with the same lineup from its very first gig. Very few do.
Very well. I don't know. Do you think?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Oh, right. Fair enough. Coldplay.
I said very few.
All right. You like talking about Coldplay. So.
I haven't. I'll try to not mention them once this season.
Well, there you go. So, from time to time, if you're right, a bit of recruitment's needed. For Justin Lockley, he didn't even own a guitar
when editors came knocking?
And then 2012, I started a lot of directing and my little film company.
Yeah.
So I was actually out doing a documentary with Frightened Rabbit in the Highlands, just before their Pedestrian Reverse record. So we were doing a couple of weeks, literally in the Upper Highlands and Hebrides, with those guys, and I got a call from editor's manager who said, "We're looking for a new guitarist. Would you be interested?" Initially, they'd booked their biggest show they'd ever done, which was headlining Rockwerchter in Belgium.
Yeah,
which is like 60,000 people, and they couldn't really back out the show, but they never had a guitarist. They didn't have a guitarist anymore, and
so is this the end of in this light on this?
Yeah, I think it was in like it's past in this light, but they were attempting to make what would become Weight of Your Love.
Weight of Your Love,
but it was a very different beast back then, and I think they'd had a couple of aborted runs at making that record and decided that it's not working anymore, so they parted way with their guitarist. And then I got a call saying, "Will you do this show? There's that show and a festival in France and a couple of Birmingham shows." Mm-hmm. And I was like, "Yeah, cool, that sounds good." Because I thought, I'll do it. It's not that much touring. It'd be good. It's totally different. But at that time, I didn't even own a guitar.
Really?
No, it was really bizarre. I was like, I had guitars in I'd lent to mates or stuff, or they were just in studios around Britain. But I didn't actually play guitar for like a year or so, and I didn't even have a guitar. And they were asking me to be the lead guitarist in a really big band,
doing 60,000 people.
And I just said, fuck it, let's do it.
Yeah.
And then went down to rehearsals, met them all, and I think it came off the back of their manager had seen everything that I've made through the years from Milo onwards, so he was very aware of how I play and my style and what I bring to it, and
sound of it.
Also the production side of things and also the film side of things. He's like, I wasn't just a guitarist that was going to come in and just play a couple of shows.
Play 6 chords.
Yeah. And
that'll be
so, me. so it was like, and then I managed to pick up a guitar, and I remember learning the tunes whilst I was out shooting a documentary in a hotel at night, just going, all right. I said to the guy, send me the set list that you're thinking of. And it's just enormous. It was like, it's 3 records worth of songs to learn. Mm-hmm. So I started learning it, and it's really good, really, really good. It was really strange, but we'd had like mutual friends, or we knew mutual producers and stuff, and they did their third record with Flood. Milo did their second record with Flood. Yeah. And I think that recommendation is what got me in the band. That's why they came knocking in the first place. And after those shows, everyone gels, and we just flew straight into what became Editor's 4th record, and I've been part of the band ever since.
Cool. So I guess I wrote this question down because I actually didn't know. So was there no audition process?
No, I just turned up.
And
literally just turned up on turned up in Birmingham, and Russell and Ed were there. Tom had tonsillitis, so he wasn't there on the first day. And we just started running through the set as if I'd been there forever.
Been there since 2002.
Yeah, just rocked up. Managed to get a guitar, which was handy.
Mm-hmm. Did you have to go and buy one from
I literally went to can't remember which one it was. The one that used to be down on the quayside.
Sound Control.
Yeah, before it was Sound Control, it was something else.
Okay, yeah.
Well, I went there and just picked up like a Jazzmaster or something, and then just went down with that.
Here I am.
Turned up, a few pedals in the bag, cracked on, played the tunes. I think we even started jamming around what would become Sugar on their 4th record, and started writing pretty much. And that was that. That was like day one. That was day one.
Yeah.
And then it just. I think we were in rehearsals for 2 months, and then we just went out and smashed this massive headline show
in Belgium.
Yeah,
nice.
And then
So the whole connection thing as well must have been great. Knowing that each other through different bands, and they approached you. That must be odd.
It's a bizarre phone call, because it's probably the last phone call I was ever expecting to get. Mm-hmm. You just don't, even though somewhere along the way we'd crossed paths. I didn't know him, and they, you know, they could have had any guitarist in the world. But they've called me. Who wasn't even known that well for being a guitarist, so it was quite weird.
I suppose if you look at the Milo sounding, if you've got these your own projects are quite a big, expansive sound. The albums, Wave Your Love, In Dreaming, the Violence in You, and they are, in my opinion, I'd be right.
Oh yeah,
they're big.
It's more chordal. There's bigger sounds. I mean,
so
a lot of what Chris played, a lot of what Chris played on the first 3 Edits records is it's very sharp, very riff based. It's all based around 2 strings, really high up, really spiky, and that's his vibe, that's his sound. And you know, I play a few of his parts every night on stage, and they're really exciting songs to play. They're really gratifying tunes to play on the guitar. As a guitarist, you want to play those bits, but I don't really see or write in that way. I write in a more layered and textured way.
Yeah.
I mean, I could pull off a riff when I need to, but I don't naturally go to that high, I'm a lead guitarist, listen to me, really spiky kind of thing. It's just not my... It hurts my ears. It's just not my thing. But so yeah, it's quite, that's why the sound kind of radically changed in record 4. Records 5 and 6, I recorded those, so they changed even further. So they, you know, I went back into my mode as, you know, a producer engineer.
Yeah,
which is my favourite place to be.
Cool. So actually, that leads on to my next set of questions. So one quick one before we move on to it. So there was no feeling of like you're the new kid on the block. There's no like
no, not at all.
In school.
No, because I'd done as much as they'd had in different ways.
Yeah.
So it was like we weren't in unequal places. Yeah, they'd smashed some loads of bigger shows and they'd been to Europe a lot more. But you know, I made loads of records. And done loads of things, and that was, you know, it all kind of balanced out. It's like, oh well, you know, you might have gone and done this or done that, but I've been and done this, that as well. So, you know,
and
we're pretty much on an even keel on that front. You know, and in some ways, you know, it's kind of an advantage for me that I've done lots of different things, whereas they've just been in editors. They've been, you know, in that one thing. You know, and there's different ways you look at that. But I always like, even now I'm in editors, I still make other records and do other projects.
So how much of an Editors fan was Justin before joining? The answer might surprise you.
Yeah, it's weird because you got to live with other people's songs. You know, I wasn't like a massive Editors fan before I joined editors. And I think that helped because I came at it from a very different angle to maybe someone who came in who knew all their songs inside out. It would have just made the same band again because they would have tried playing like Chris. I actively didn't want to play like Chris because it's not my style of playing. So, and I was very upfront about that. I was like, I want to play all the strings on a guitar, you know, and layer things up.
On the flip side, not changing things is no bad thing. Jimmy Eat World.
I know there's only been really one change in your band, and that was about 95. Someone.
Yeah.
So has that helped, having the same 4 people, the gang mentality? Has that helped?
I mean, I only have our experience. You know.
I think it must help. Personally speaking, it must.
It
help.
hasn't hurt.
Yeah,
we're still here.
Yeah, it's true.
You know, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess like if you found something that works, you can just double down on what you're doing that works.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work, then you find a way to, you know, you kind of assess why it's not working and look at how you can address that.
Sometimes urgency can prompt the recruitment. Sheepdogs.
So, what was the decision to join the band? Who approached who? And
I guess I was approached by the band. The guitar player at the time left.
Right.
You know, went home during a tour, and I guess you kind of needed.
We needed someone right away.
Yeah.
And our guitar tech was a friend of Jim's.
Okay. Yeah.
He called him, and we actually flew him down to Richmond, Virginia.
Yeah, around Halloween time.
Right.
2015.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would make sense to when I saw you the last 2 times you were here, because you would join the band.
He had just come on.
Yeah. So what was it like? Because we've spoke to Justin from the band Editors, and he was brought in because their guitarist left. What was it like being essentially the new kid in class?
It was pretty wild, you know, because I had probably a night or two to learn as much material as I could, you know, and then we had the luxury of having 2 rehearsals before, so it was all very fast moving, you know. But my band was kind of like a 70s rock band as well.
Right.
A little more in the blues realm, you know, but it was kind of a similar thing. So it felt pretty natural. I fell in very naturally, and, you know.
That's good.
Yeah.
We learned with Keith and Chris. Getting along with someone for them was also key. Which is pretty damn important.
Crucial.
So one of the things I spoke to Justin from Editors about not so long ago was he joined Editors in 2013. He was like the new kid.
Yeah.
But I didn't get a chance to talk to the rest of the band about how it felt bringing someone in. So if you're alright to talk about when Andy Burrows came in, what was that whole process like for you, getting a new person in the team or a new person in the gang? I mean, I know Andy plays for like Razorlight and played for Razorlight and with Tom from Editors, so he's qualified, obviously.
Yeah.
So how did you find him, or like was it always him? I mean, without giving too much away, if it wasn't him.
we sort of had other like touring drummers.
Yeah.
Before Andy like officially joined the band, he was the first drummer after our original drummer who we said, okay, you are like a member of We Are Scientists.
Yes.
And we're very good friends with the touring drummers, but yeah, I think it was.
I think he's the only other one who's like written with us.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Well, I've been on Barbara.
Yeah, Barbara and TV on Fun Set.
Yeah.
But I think with him, we really did feel a sense of like we feel like a trio gang, and like when we go around, we kind of like the 3 of us will obnoxiously exclude other people because we just like hanging out with one another. So it definitely was a very natural, weirdly it was a very natural like band fit, because it sort of, the discussion of it started unnaturally. We had this idea for Barbara that because we sort of recorded the record before Barbara with our drummers still in the band, but we also recorded it with session drummers and stuff. But so we hadn't actually like split up with our old drummer while we were making Brain Thrust Mastery.
Yeah.
So this was our first record that before we started recording it, we knew we didn't have a drummer.
Okay, right,
So we had an idea at that point that we were going to ask just a bunch of our drummer friends to play on a couple of songs each. And we didn't really know Andy very well, but I went out with him a couple of nights while Razorlight were in New York. They were just like hanging out in New York for 2 weeks or something like that.
Losing money.
As Razorlight did.
Just blowing cash. And so he and I kind of just like had a few nights where we were having a great time hanging out, and I knew he was an awesome drummer. And so I kind of pitched that idea to him, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I would love to do that." And at that point, he knew he was not long for Razorlight. He was planning on leaving Razorlight at that point. I think it was like a month or 2 months before he officially quit. And so when he quit, he immediately just started saying, "Well, we talked about doing this. Why don't I do all of it?" And he was probably the drummer of all the ones we had discussed it with that we knew the least. And we were like, "Oh, well, that seems weird."
Rash.
Yeah. But then the more we hung out with him and talked to him, we were like, "Oh my God, this guy is amazing." And he's one of our very, very, very best friends now. So it ended up making a lot of sense, but it didn't really start organically, which is pretty funny.
Some common themes cropped up there. You need to put yourself out there, get in contact with other musicians, and find people you really get along with. Yeah. Making music should be as fun as possible.
Always going to come across if you're not getting on or you're not having fun.
Yeah.
Standing up there on stage looking as miserable as sin. That might be a look for some people.
It's no look for all.
I think more often than not, it comes across in the music.
It does.
Additional news snippets from the interviews you've heard today will pop up in other episodes later in the season. And at the end of Season 2, we'll release each conversation with all of our guests in full as standalone episodes. As a reminder, if you like the show, please take a few seconds just to give us a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts from. It makes a huge difference in helping us grow our audience and promoting the show. Coming up next week, another split topic episode that flows on from today's content as we delve into playing live and location. So I thought a lot about pairing these things together. We could have paired a lot of different things in a lot of different ways, but there's a fair bit of overlap between these topics. Amongst others, you'll hear once again from Dave Keuning.
But I would say this: don't be afraid to go to just like a medium-sized city.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be the biggest one. It can be just a city that has a few places to play.
All of the show notes for today's episode can be found at acpgmusic.com, along with our back catalogue of episodes. If you like what you hear, or perhaps have some improvements or specific guests you'd like us to consider, we'd love to hear from you. Email us at info@acpgmusic.com or hit us up on social media. Keep supporting upcoming artists, and we'll catch you next time.
But I would say this: don't be afraid to go to just like a medium-sized city.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be the biggest one. It can be just a city that has a few places to play.